This is the 18th season of Bass Talk Live. With your host, Matt Pancraft. BTL is brought to you by Lowrance, Bass Cat Boats, AFCO, Strike King Lures, Sunline, Big Bite Baits, Spro, X-Zone Lures, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods.
BTL, coming at you!
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we are going to talk about bass fishing. It is Tuesday, May 17th, halfway through the month of May. We have a great show today. If you follow BTL for the last several years, you know that I have developed a strong affinity for the spinning rod, known by all other sorts of names, but I call it spinning rod. It's just another tool in the box. And our guest today is very adept at it. He's adept at a lot of other things. He's made over $500,000 over the past 5 years over on the MLF Pro Circuit. He's fished a BPT event last year, won an Angler of the Year in the Toyota Series. He was Rookie of the Year on the Pro Circuit, and that is Matt Becker out of Pennsylvania. We'll talk to him a little bit about it. I just found out he's one of those that are migrating, I think is the word, to Tennessee, joining the list of well-established pros that are now going to make their home in Tennessee. But we're going to talk about Matt. We're going to go through a comprehensive guide to the benefits of the spinning rod, and then also talk a little bit about how he's kind of jumped on the tour and been one of the most consistent anglers out there. You know, I like to really break down numbers and look at stats, both good and bad. And over the course of his career, 67 events with MLF, and the $521,000 that he's made, he's averaging $7,776 every time he launches his boat in a tournament. And folks, the biggest entry fee that he's paid for that is, I think, around $5,500. So every time he launches his boat, Matt Becker is making money. So we will kind of figure out why that is. Before we get to Matt, and I see him in the queue and ready, there's a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. One of them is more just a discussion topic that some things resonated in my head, and I was like, I wonder, and then it panned out, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to mention that. The other thing is I just saw that Stephen Browning won the Patriot Cup, which was on My Outdoor TV. It was one of these 4 cups that the BPT anglers qualify for, and then are filmed dark, meaning you don't know any of the results, where they are. That being said, and then it airs later on. And we've talked about on the show kind of the resurgence, the second win that Stephen Browning has gotten on the BPT. Surprisingly, I think of him as a slow, methodical angler, picking things apart, catching his 5 biggest and coming in over the course of his career. But he's one of these guys who's gotten this catch, weigh, release format down. 5 top 10s over the past 2 years, coming off a top 5 finish. He just won this Patriot Cup. Now, granted, it was filmed in November on Louisville and Eagle Mountain, but another win for him. He's in the top 5 in the Angler of the Year. Need to get Stephen Browning on to talk about kind of the resurgence in his career. Again, I know we had him on a couple years ago on BTL, but need to get him back on. I'm trying to also wrap around my head where these cups fit in, I guess, kind of the grands. Is it considered a tour win? Is it a specialty win? I know the money spends all the same that they get for the cups, but kind of in a career 5, 10, 15 years from now, I know we've been talking a lot about perspective in the sport, longevity of the sport, how to determine what is success, what is not, based on the history. And I'd be interested to see when we look back where these pre-film cups, because I mean the competition is, just as strong as it is ever. It's just not live, and there was never any live coverage of tournaments before Bass Live came out. So it'd be interesting to see. Somewhat along those lines, I follow golf. I like watching golf a lot. I used to golf a lot. I used to live on a golf course, and it was kind of my escape. Grew up golfing. Have not golfed in a couple years, though, but I see a lot of comparisons outside of the prize pool and money, which is drastically bigger in golf because of the more interest in it, more people follow it, more people play it. But I don't know if anyone's been following this, but there is a shakeup in the world of golf right now, and it's the LIV Golf Investments Tour. It's primarily funded by Saudi Arabia's public investment fund. The face of this is Greg Norman, Australian golfer, and it's basically in 30 seconds they're trying to. They say they're not competing with the PGA Tour, but it's big money backed with a smaller field and a more payout. And I couldn't help but thinking, man, this sounds awful familiar to what we've seen in a number of other sports. If you listen to BTL last couple decades, Mark Jeffries is big into bowling. There's kind of the same thing that's going on in bowling. I know lacrosse tried to do the same thing. Rodeo tried to do the same thing. There's some stuff in tennis, and it's been successful to different degrees in all of these aspects for people. But obviously with what happened in 2019, and we've seen the BPT, which is obviously very successful. Look at the yearly earnings for the guys over on the BPT. But right now, the deal is they had an event over in Europe, and then the PGA, they say they're not competing with the PGA. Like I said, this is a truncated version. But then the PGA didn't grant them releases to go overseas to play in it. Phil Mickelson just pulled out of the players that's going on here in Tulsa. And there's a number of big-time players that have expressed interest or reiterated their commitment to the PGA Tour. I want to read a quote that Greg Norman said from this event, and then I'm going to transition that over to a quote from 2019. This is about this new league. He said, "We're here long term. I want to give the opportunity for players to have a better chance and more chance, other chances to go out there as independent contractors and go play golf. Let me ask you this question. What is wrong with that? And from the PGA Tour standpoint, what are they afraid of? Quite honestly, with us giving the opportunity for independent contractors to go out and play for additional golf, we are 100% additive to the game of golf. We just want to make the game of golf bigger and better, have a lot more evolution to the game of golf, enhance the entertainment side of things for the fans, for the players, for the stakeholders, for everybody. So as the players understand it now, it's a totally different narrative." So I thought that kind of sounded familiar. So I went back to 2019 when the BPT released additional details. This was in September of 2018, announcing the 2019 BPT. And here's the quote here. "Never in the history of our sport have anglers had this much control over their own destiny, from the bathroom to the boardroom and everywhere in between. These 80 anglers will have the opportunity to set a precedent for our sport for generations to come, a precedent that will likely include lower or no entry fees, higher payout, and better conditions for anglers in every regard." It's just interesting. It's kind of the same scenario that's going down with golf. Obviously, with bigger money, there's an article that came out that Jack Nicklaus was offered $100 million to be the face of this Saudi league. But it will be interesting to see where the golf goes, and I see a lot of parallels between what's going on there. Independent contractors, money, growing the sport. How much allegiance do you have to the quote unquote OG, the original Bass? We've had a lot of talk about that with the passing of Ray Scott and some of the history that we just talked about. So not bad, not good. Just, I think, a discussion topic that is worthy of kind of keeping pace on and seeing that this is not new territory. It's kind of repeated over and over in all different leagues. And I think competition is good. I think evolution is good. We've seen that with tactics. We've seen that with electronics. We've seen that with everything. So, all right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to have Matt Becker on. He's going to kind of break down how, I guess, over the past 5-6 years, he just kind of jumped on tour and has had remarkable consistency. So it is BTL on a Tuesday. We'll be back right after this.
The time for you to get Active Target Live Sonar is now. Get $200 cash back when you buy Active Target, or $400 back with Active Target and Elite FS9. And change the way you fish. Target fish with Active Target and let Elite FS handle the rest. Active Target is also compatible with HDS Live and HDS Carbon. Active Target by Lowrance.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
Welcome back, BTL, May 17th. Now it's time to bring in our guest for the day from Tennessee, or a place where we'll soon call home, I guess. That would be none other than Matt Becker off a solid, very solid finish there on Lake Guntersville. You've had a heck of a solid year, man. You're, top 5 in the Angler of the Year?
Yeah, it's been good this year. Really, the Tennessee River is my nemesis, so I'm pretty pumped to get through these last two without bombing one for sure.
And you're moving there.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the reasoning. Well, of course, Tennessee's beautiful. It's central to all the tournaments, but I really struggle on the Tennessee River, so I'm like, the only way to get better is to go fish it all the time. So that was kind of the reasoning behind it all.
It's really interesting. We talk about the different hot spots for professional bass fishing. You got the East Texas, there's a Florida group, a Louisiana, and then that Alabama and Ozark group, the West Coast guys out in California. But over the past 3 or 4 years, there was a mass movement to the Guntersville area. Matt and Jordan Lee kind of grew up there. They both ended up getting places there. Some of them moved back. You had a Hawk who won the Cup, Justin Lucas. You saw Amart move. I mean, just tons of guys you could go. But recently, it's been more the Tennessee area than the Alabama River Alabama area on that. And is part of your reasoning also? I mean, you started seeing these guys moving there and having a ton of success, and the schedule is kind of heavily in that part of the country.
Yeah, definitely. And looking at it, I could definitely see why everybody moved to Lake Guntersville, because that lake is absolutely amazing and it's loaded with fish, and there's so many different things that you could do there specifically. You could get so good at, fishing offshore, fishing shallow, fishing grass, fishing rock, whatever you want to do, you can do it there. And really all of the Tennessee rivers all the Tennessee River lakes seem to be that way. So it's just a really good training ground, and get to see all those different conditions and kind of figure out, how to catch bass in all those seasons, all those conditions and everything. And that's what I'm really looking forward to do.
Where you grew up, could you fish year round, or was there? I mean, it was frozen, done, you were done.
Yeah. So, I mean, I grew up fishing the Three Rivers in Pittsburgh. So realistically, our fishing season is from about April till October. November's pushing it. So we get 6 months, 7 months out of the year to fish. And the other time, there's a couple months of that in between where there's ice, but you can't ice fish. And then, I would go out and do a little bit of ice fishing for, panfish and stuff. But as far as bass fishing, it's like a 6-7 month window.
It's crazy to me how many of the top guys in the sport cut their teeth in areas where they could only bass fish half the year. Like if you think about any other stick and ball sport, and it's like, yeah, I only laced up the skates for 6 months. I only hit balls for 6 months. I only golf for 6. There's no way you could compete, especially when you're growing and when you're trying to build that resume. But in fishing, there's something about up north. We've seen obviously what Seth Feider's done. You look at the non-traditional areas of a Brandon Polinick, a Kevin Van Dam, a Mike Iaconelli. List goes on and on that. What do you think it is for so many of these guys who don't get to fish year round, especially coming young, being able to have such immediate success against guys who can dump a boat in the water 365 days a year?
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot. I really don't know because, like you said, it's all about that time on the water. And when you're getting half the amount of time on the water as someone else, it's you can't compete with that. But the only thing I could really come up with thinking about that is like when you are out there fishing, usually the fishing is so good up north that you like really, really have to figure something out to do well in the tournaments. So you kind of got to get really good at figuring out that little something special in order to do well. And it's just kind of helped me take that and, use it all over the country.
So did you find a house already and stuff? Like, are you going to be moving this year? Like, is it going to be crazy for you, or are you going to wait till the end of the year? Or?
Yeah. So I'm not going to move till after the fishing season. I'm rarely home anyway. Like I haven't been home in Pennsylvania, but maybe 3-4 weeks this entire year. So, I mean, I'm closing on a house tomorrow, but we probably won't move till the fall, October, November range, and kind of get settled in before next season.
How old are you now?
29, almost 30.
Okay. So you've been doing this game for a while. Did you do the college deal at all, or just jump straight into it? I mean, it looks, based on your stats, like you didn't, you just kind of jumped in and started catching them.
Yeah, I never really went to college. So I was, I've been fishing my whole life. My dad got me into fishing and kind of started working my way up in the tournaments. I was really into the Bass Nation stuff. I fished the Pennsylvania Bass Nation for years. And I kind of got stuck in a rut there where, you'd fish all year, make the state team, make the regional, go to the regional. And I finished second like 3 or 4 years in a row and just missed making nationals. And I kind of just got sick of that cycle. So I jumped out of that and got into the BFLs and then moved up to at the time, Costa Series. And my first year fishing those, I was fortunate enough to win the second one I fished. And that kind of launched me into the FLW tour at the time. And it's really been a blur ever since.
It's interesting. I pulled a quote from that. Was it on Champlain? No, you got a check at Champlain, and then you won at Thousand Islands.
Yeah.
I pulled a quote from that. So it was a second in 2017. You said, "This is my first year. I wasn't sure if I could hang with these guys, but I knew I had to try, and I got a check at Champlain, and that was a huge confidence booster. I knew if I'd ever win one, it would be on a body of water like this. I'm thrilled. It feels unbelievable." That's your quote, and then I piggyback it off. I had Rick Harris on. He's one of my good buddies. He won a Toyota one-day Toyota at Texoma recently.
Yeah, I know Rick.
Yeah, and I'd had some talks with him before. Like, he's a good angler. He's guided, but he had never kind of broken that couple checks in a row, I can hang with these guys threshold. And then he did it, and then this year he went out and won. And this quote kind of seems similar, like, just how much confidence you can gain by having a little bit of success and removing the self-doubt in your head that you had. How important do you think it was that early on, that first year, that you went out and went check and win in your first 2 Toyota events?
Oh, for sure. Not just even the confidence, but the money. Cause I had no money. I was scraping pennies just to pay my entry fee into the Costa Series. And quite honestly, looking back, if I hadn't cashed that check at Champlain, I'm not even sure I could have paid the balance for the Thousand Islands tournament and wouldn't even be here right now. So like just little things like that have happened the whole way. But, you never really know until you do it. So I get up there at Champlain and, there's 200 boats. I'm launching next to like David Dudley and, all these big name pros. I've never fished any big scale tournament like that. And just to go out and, cash a check, finish, I don't know what I did, 40th or 50th place or something. But it was just like, hey, like this isn't much different than what you're used to. And you can compete against these guys. So I had a much different mindset going into the second one at Thousand Islands, where I felt a lot more comfortable with that style of fishing.
You think you fish differently with a couple zeros in the bank account and a number in front of that? Like, do you think it totally changes the way you attack a tournament?
Not for me personally. I really don't think about that, but I could see how it definitely could affect some people for sure.
You always been a spinning rod guy? That's why I want to have you on. I was super impressed. Like, I've kind of talked to you a little bit. We've done a little bit of social media. I know you were on BTO with Mark when I was gone. I was out of the studio. But like, you kind of notice guys that you always try to like relate to other people. You notice guys, I like that guy's style. Like, I remember you watching you fish the one that Andrew Upshaw won. I remember you doing some spinning rod stuff, and I'm like, yeah, that guy's like doing some stuff like I like to do. Has that always been your style, or how did you kind of develop into the always having an egg beater on the front deck?
Yeah, well, I mean, that kind of stems from my dad, going back to always fishing with him. He never really used a bait caster at all. So it was kind of,
really,
yeah, he'd bass fished, local tournaments his whole life, and always been about a spinning rod and a tube. He threw a tube pretty much everywhere on a spinning rod. So it kind of stemmed from that. I'd always used them growing up and just felt comfortable with it. And then as I started expanding more, I kind of branched into the bait caster rather than, most of your tournament guys are probably the other way. But it's just always felt comfortable and normal to me. And then, the more I do it, the more I learn, different little techniques and little tricks you can do with the spinning rod and different setups and stuff. And it's just kind of always on my deck now.
I definitely want to spend some time on that today because I have some questions. I know some of the viewers have some questions on it. But my question is, was it a tough decision for you to jump into, at the time, the FLW tour with only basically three Toyotas underneath your belt, and then just say, hey, we're going to go drop $5K on a tournament and fish against Thrift and Andy Morgan and David Dudley and Scott Martin?
Not really. I mean, I knew that's what I've always wanted to do. And, I won that tournament. It gave me, 40, 50 grand. And I was like, this is the only time that I've ever had any sort of amount that of money. And it's the only time that I'm going to have the opportunity to do it with a little bankroll to do it. So I'm like, I'm just going to double up and go all in with my winnings and bet on myself and see if we can hang. Luckily, it worked out.
What year did you get hooked up with Favorite?
2019. So I fished basically my rookie season on my own dime. I don't think I got but $500 in sponsor money.
500. And
yes.
So the entry fees that year would have been was that still 4,500 then in 2018?
I think it was 5,000, but we had 7 tournaments, if I remember right. So it was 35,000, I think. And
so you're 50,000 in on a year.
Yeah, easily.
You had just won 50,000.
Yeah.
So you basically took all that and just dumped it over into the FLW tour.
Yeah, and basically, I was just looking at stuff. Actually, yesterday, a buddy tagged me in an old Facebook post. But in like 2016, I had jumped into BFLs and local tournaments, and I took all my winnings from that year and essentially paid my entry fees into the Costas the next year, or the Toyotas, and then took the winnings from the Toyotas and paid my entries into the pro circuit or the FLW tour that year. So really, I've just been playing with my own money that I've won.
That's wild, because then in 18, which would have been your first year, you did 46K there, which allowed you to go into 19. And then I would assume because you made the Forest Wood Cup and kind of got into the sponsor game a little bit, then you started getting a little bit more comfortable in the industry, and it was just kind of off and running from there.
Yeah, basically, each year is kind of snowballed sponsorship wise. And now we're sitting pretty well on that side of things. And it's really just been a blur ever since, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
How important do you think top 10 every single year is? Because every single year you fish over the last 6 years, you've had a top 10 or a win or contended for the win or a top 5. From the sponsorship side of the game, do you think that's important to be able to say, hey, look, I was on TV here, here's all the coverage I got there? Like, do you think that's really helped you kind of keep the momentum rolling? I mean, it's every single year, a top 10, 18, 19, 20, 21. You had a top 10 this year with a 10th place at Rayburn to kick things off. I mean, that's pretty impressive to be fishing on the final day every single year of your career so far.
Yeah, it's been a blessing for sure. I don't know how that really happened, but the sponsors definitely love that. It just shows that, historically you're going to be in contention at least one time every year. So, that's always good. And people like to see that. But honestly, that side of it's been a lot more personal for me. It's all about those personal relationships, building relationships with the company and, the people there. And that's kind of helped me a lot more on top of the performance as well. So, you got to do a little bit of everything to make that game work.
Did you help design your wrap this year? Because it's pretty cool.
I didn't design it. So Favorite has a graphic designer, but it was kind of mine and Brittany's idea to kind of go that route and just promote the Defender brand under the Favorite.
If you haven't seen it, how would you describe it for the iTunes list? It's like, it's about as red, white, and blue as you can get.
Yeah. I mean, just imagine an eagle flying, shooting 2 AK-47. No, it's
that's kind of what it looks like.
Yeah, no, it's as red, white, and blue and American as you can be for sure. And it gets a lot of attention on the road, and that was the goal.
Okay, so here's where things get interesting for me, and I kind of start paying attention. So 12 top 10 finishes. Let's do 11. Let's take the BFL out. I mean, not that it doesn't count, but I'm just talking, let's do AAA and off. So 11 top 10 finishes, 2 wins in there. Rookie of the Year title, Angler of the Year title in the North. Anyway, all these things. How many of those out of those 11 top 10s do you think were done with a spinning rod? Because I went back and did it because, I mean, I was kind of like, is this a little low? And then I was like, no, this is what I do for a living. I analyze this stuff. So, yeah, I'm going through every single tournament and every single result. How many of those do you think were done with the spinning rod? Let me see. We're talking Sam Rayburn, Lake Champlain, Lake Martin, Detroit River, Cherokee, Thousand Islands.
That's a lot of them for sure.
7 of them, dude. 7 of them. 7 of them were with the spinning rod. So then I went back and I even broke it down. It's like, well, does Matt just do one thing with a spinning rod? No. You have weightless wacky, Nico rig, shaky head, drop shot, spy bait, swim bait, Ned rig. The common denominator in there is the drop shot. But dude, you are like super versatile with a spinning rod, and really showed that off this year with I mean, Rayburn was not easy this year. Kind of a stingy tournament to kick things off, and you primarily drop shotted your way to a top 10 there.
I did, yeah. Yeah, I just basically, fished some brush piles and threw a drop shot Nico rig in those brush piles just to get my, get a solid limit of fish each day. And then I'd catch, one kicker a day on like a chatterbait or something. But spinning rod does the bulk of the damage.
Okay, so practice this year is a little different. You guys have what? Only 2 days of practice and then an off day, and then the Derby starts.
Yep.
I've talked to a bunch of guys about that. Some of them love it. Some of them absolutely hate it. They're like, dude, why are we driving across the country to be able to fish for 2 days? Then we hang out and barbecue. Then we suck for 2 days, and we fish basically 3 days, and we're on our way home. Prior to that, it was 3 full days, then an off day, then your 2 days.
Yeah, so we had the 2 days last year as well.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Okay, so this is the second year of that then.
Yeah.
Do you think your affinity for a spinning rod helps is beneficial for that format as far as identifying areas where you can get bites?
Definitely. I've always been a fan of the 2 days of practice. Really, it kind of puts the emphasis more on your homework. You got to do your homework and come into the event prepared. Because looking back, the first day of practice when we had 3 days, whatever I found that day never really panned out in the tournament anyway. So I kind of just erased that. And, you're on the water, so you're doing a little bit, you're gaining a little bit of knowledge, but the last 2 days of practice are always when you figure it out. Really the last day of practice is when you figure it out. So that's always been my approach is just to go out.
Uh-oh. Lost the audio there. We had this issue before. Still lost the audio. He's back. You back there? I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're due for a break anyway. We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to have you log off, log back in, and when we come back, we'll continue with this kind of spinning rod manifesto with Matt Becker. I also want to get into he mentioned that last day. I want to get into how he approaches that last day, because I've heard a lot of guys talk about finding fish on the last day of practice, and how that often trumps the first part of practice and how that carries over into the tournament. So it is BTL on a Tuesday. We'll be back after this.
I've made my living on the water for over 20 years.
For 14 years.
For over 23 years.
I've worn a bunch of different clothing brands over the years.
Some companies big.
And some companies small. All of them said they were making clothing for us.
But none of them knew us.
None of them were us.
Except for one.
Except for one.
Except one. AFCO. AFCO.
AFCO. AFCO.
Fishing isn't part of us. It is us.
The KVD 100 jerkbait. 15 different colors. A perfect combination of roll, wiggle, and flash. Increased castability. 3D eyes. Premium black nickel hooks. KVD. Tie one on. Striking lures.
Are you looking to install your own fishing electronics? Well, the Bass Tank is here to help you. The solution is the Bass Tank Power Harness. It takes the guesswork out of installation. No more voltage issues or interference. Designed by an engineer so that you can get professional results right there in your own garage. Installation done right with the help of the Bass Tank Power Harness. You can feel confident knowing that your installation was done right. The Bass Tank Power Harness. Give us a call or order yours today at thebastank.com.
Elite Series Pro Daryl Gleason here. My Pro Guide batteries keep me going on those long tournament days and long practice days. Always plenty of juice, never fail. The best part about Pro Guide batteries, it's the people behind the company. They have over 40 years experience in the battery business, keeping all of us fishermen out on the water longer, catching more fish. Check them out at ProGuideBatteries.com.
What's up, Bass Talk Live fans? Brandon Polnick here. And ever since I won a couple Bassmaster Elite Series events on X-Zone Lures, I've been getting a bunch of questions of what makes them so special and different. And really, the truth is, it's in the details. The little details, things like no cheap fillers in their plastic. That gives you more lifelike action, more realistic and vibrant colors. But don't just take my word for it. Go to www.xzonelures.com and check them out for yourself.
All right, we're back. BTL on a Tuesday, talking with Matt Becker. We got you back audio-wise, Matt? Nope, still don't. You just pull the earplugs out. We'll roll with that. And then you have to unmute your mic. He's pretty adept at it. There you go. We got you there. Yeah, you're back. You're good.
I think I'm gonna have to take a little of my Gunnersville check and buy some new headphones.
Yeah, my headphones always get jacked up too. I always forget that I have them in, and then you walk off, and it's like that and phone chargers. I just did an article. It's like, hey, you're on the road. What are some things you need? You know, you make sure you can't forget when you leave on the road. And I said 3 phone chargers.
Yeah.
Because I always tend to, I'll break one, or I'll slam it in a boat lid or something. Or I'll take the one out of the truck and put it in the boat, or the one out of the room and forget it. I said, you need 3 phone chargers and 3 sets of headphones if you have to do anything, because one of them will always break.
For sure.
Anyway, before we went to the break, you were talking about how you seem to find most of your fish on the final day of practice. Therefore, it doesn't really matter how many days of practice you get, I guess, or the first 2 days don't. But I mean, you said over the course of your career, it's been last hour, last minute finds that have translated to good derbies.
Yeah, you know, it always seems that way. And honestly, some of my best tournaments, I kind of figure it out in the tournament. So it's almost like, you know, you find a little clue in practice and then kind of expand on it in the tournament, and it just kind of turns into a good finish, you know. So I've always been of less practice is better, but, you know, not everyone agrees with that. So it just works for me. I really like the short practices.
All right. So you're on a body of water for practice. Everyone has their confidence baits that they're going to start out with. Let's do a typical body of water. It's hard. Well, we'll include Florida and the northern lakes too. Spinning rod wise, what are you always going to have rigged up? Because you're always going to have a spinning rod on your deck regardless, even if you're on the Red River or if you're on power fishing Falcon, it doesn't matter. You'll have a spinning rod, at least one rigged up, is what you said before. So your confidence rods, you're going to a new body of water, you're dumping the boat in for the first time. What's on your deck on a spinning rod?
I mean, I don't go anywhere, any lake in the country without a drop shot and a Wacky Rig. If there's a lot of grass, you'll do just a weightless, stick bait, Senko, lunker log type worm. But, a drop shot catches bass everywhere in the country. Doesn't matter type of structure, size of fish, doesn't matter. Drop shot's going to catch them. And a wacky worm for those, shallow fish, docks, wood, whatever, you name it. Those two are in my boat 365 days a year.
Do you think that the perception of the Nico, the Wacky Rig, and the drop shot has changed over the past 3 years, and especially since live has become a lot more sophisticated and the feed has become better, and we've seen tournaments done on it? Like, what percentage of guys would you say now on tour have those in their arsenal who would literally laugh at you 5 years ago for having them out?
Yeah, I mean, I would think everybody would have one, but I don't know.
Why don't you think people do? Why do you think there's so many that I don't mess around with that? Like, what I've always tried to figure out why guys are averse to that.
Yeah, I don't understand it. I don't know what they got against the spinning rod. It's at the end of the day, it's about catching bass. It doesn't matter what it's on.
How do you gauge your bite to quality ratio? Because that's the biggest thing that I struggle with is, I'm getting bites, but how do you throw a spinning rod without sacrificing the 3 to 4.5, like the money making the top 10? Because you figured out how to make a top 10 with these things. All related to me in my personal journey through the Bassmaster Opens and Toyota Series a couple years ago. I mean, I catch a limit like 98% of the time, but I've never been able to get over that hump with it to go from the 12.5 to 14 pound bag, or if it's big, the 14 to the 18. That's something that you seem to figure out. And that is what my quest right now in my current situation is. How do you take it and get over the hump from catching more 2.5s to jumping up to that next level, cashing bigger checks and making top 10s with it?
Man, I wish I had an answer or a system for that. I really don't. It just seems like I've really been fortunate and get a couple big bites when I need them. It's always, it seems like you can find certain areas that have a little bit smaller fish, and then you'll get that area that has that mid-range fish. But I believe there's big fish going to be mixed in with those, and you really just got to keep fishing, keep presenting your bait right, and eventually one of those big ones are going to slip up and eat it, and they'll be right mixed in with the rest of them.
So you always play the numbers game. You don't ever sacrifice bites to try to catch bigger fish.
Never. I would never fish tournament that way. It's just, it just doesn't work right in my head.
Really?
Nope.
So on and out. Okay, let's say. Let's pick a Lake Martin. That's a spotted bass fishery. You finished 4th there in 2020. Really hard to separate yourself on a fishery like that. Yeah. How many bites are you getting a day? How many fish are you going through? Do you think you're catching more than everyone else, and therefore your ratio for 3-pounder to 14-incher is higher?
Definitely. I had a couple key stretches there on Lake Martin, for example, where, I would go through this stretch of docks and I would catch, 10 to 15 bass every single time I go through there. And every, 1 in 10 would be a 2.5 to 3 pounder. So, you just make that stretch through there. And then, I stumbled onto some bigger quality bedfish in that tournament and was able to catch them. And that really jumped me up the leaderboard in that one.
All right. So drop shot wise, do you start out with a standard drop shot, or is there a million different nuances to your drop shot based on the fishery that you're on?
No, I keep it pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I use, I really start with 12-pound Seaguard Gold Label leader. So
12 pound. That's strong, dude. That's heavy for a drop shot.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy, but the thing with the Seaguar Gold label is it's a little bit thinner than a lot of other lines. So really I'm looking at the diameter more than the pound test. So I go for that diameter. I really like the 12 pound. It's strong. And, if they're going to bite that, I can really put the wood to them and muscle them a little bit more than if you had it on 6 or 8, you have to really play those fish. So I just prefer to start with the 12. And then if I'm in a situation where it seems like they're not biting it when they should be, or if real clear water, then I'll drop down to 10 or even 8, but I really don't go less than 8 unless I'm fishing, for smallmouth up north, or, it's a real specific situation that I go less than 8.
Hook wise, big fan of the straight shank, like the 2/0, the 1/0, the straight shank that you can rig weedless. Not a huge nose hooker unless you're on a Great Lake, right?
Exactly. If I'm fishing for largemouth or, spotted bass, any type of worm, really, I'm going with that straight shank. It's just a Trocar TK 180. The 2/0 size is what I use 99% of the time. And then I generally start with like a 3/8 or 1/4 ounce tungsten drop shot weight from Epic Tungsten. And that's basically my drop shot setup that's rigged up in my boat, 90% of the time. If I go up north for smallmouth, your nose hooking a little worm. So I'll switch to the, your more split shot, drop shot style hook, number 1 size on that. Trocar makes one as well. It's the TK 150 number 1 that I use on that. And that's an excellent drop shot hook.
Teardrop, cylindrical, round. How important is the weight shape based on what you're doing?
I think it's all personal opinion. I like the teardrop or the round ball style just because you can feel what's going on down there a little better. Every once in a while you get in the real rocky area. That cylindrical style seems to not get hung up as much, but at the end of the day, I'm not really worried about losing the weight. I'm all about catching the fish. So whatever it takes to catch the fish.
Are you tying that on, or do you use the little keeper thing? I go back and forth on that, but I know some guys swear by having a barrel swivel in there. The ones I use, I don't have any issues, but I mean, as far as attaching that weight, what's your go-to on that?
So I use the little line grip swivel and I'll pull it through there and then tie an overhand knot just to keep it from slipping out, just real quick.
We're going to keep going down this wormhole just because I'm curious, because I know you're really good at this. Leader length is something that I am obsessed with. Like at the James
drop hook to weight.
Yeah. Like the hook to the weight. The hook to the weight, I think, totally changes the entire presentation.
Do you pull out a tape measure and measure it?
Yeah, no, I measure it based on the length of the rod. Like, you know how it looks right? Like it looks right or it looks wrong. Like, I mean, I'll stop and cut off 1 inch or 2 inches. I think it totally depends on it. But what are you starting out with leader length between your hook and your weight to start out with, just as a general rule of thumb? Now, let's take northern smallmouth out of the equation. Thousand Islands, Erie, all that. I'm talking about spotted bass, largemouth, 12-pound test, 90% of the fisheries across the country. What do you start now with leader length?
You're going to lose your mind because it's really just whatever tag end I have left.
Really?
Oh yeah. Like I mean, you just said it, whatever looks right. If I tie up a drop shot hook and, I got a foot or 16 inches and it looks right, I just clip on the weight. I don't really pay much attention to it at all. In the grand scheme of things, that drop shot's down there and, 3 or 4 inches either direction is not going to cause that fish to bite. He's going to see it and come up and bite it either way, in my opinion.
You think he's going to come up? So when you're
or down,
okay, that's what I say. When you're pitching a drop shot, I think, have you seen this with forward-facing sonar? You're pulling a lot of fish on drop shots from mid up in the water column that are following it down and eating it. And I think that was the most shocking thing that I discovered was these fish are not around the bottom. They're in the upper water column and they're following that thing down as fast as it falls. Have you noticed that too?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's honestly how I catch a lot of my smallmouth up north. I've been doing that for years and I could never really confirm it till I had, live scope. But once I got that, I could confirm it for sure that those fish are sitting, probably 4 to 5 feet off the bottom. And whenever you pitch that drop shot right in front of them or right next to them, it just kind of startles them. And it's almost like a reaction bite, like you're punching or something is the way I envision it, because it just zips down past their face and they don't know what happened, and they just follow it down and eat it before you can think about it. Because especially smallmouth, when you're pitching around that drop shot and it sinks, you pick up and it's already heavy. That fish followed it down and ate it before you could even pick up your slack.
All right. You ever go super short, 4 or 5 inches? That's like the length of your bait?
That would be if I'm bed fishing. I will try that once in a while, but that's sort of a niche on that. That's really the only time I'd ever do that.
Bait wise on it with that straight shank. There's a ton of different things that guys can do. I know everyone's sponsored by everything else. In all honesty, it's almost like a bladed jig. Like you're throwing a jacket. Like that's the robo worm of all drop shot baits that everything is based off of. Like I like to throw it all. I know you're sponsored by Guggen too and things, but I mean, you have a number one universal bait that you're putting on that drop shot to start out with. What are you going with? You going to 4.5? You going to 6 inch? You going some other weird style bait, or is it just
I use all of them. Robo worm, of course, is the one you got to throw. I throw the 4.5 fat inch or the 4.5 fat. I throw the 6 inch straight tail, the 6 inch fat. I throw them all. It really depends on the fishery and the size of fish that I'm targeting. Like last week on Lake Gunnersville, I was throwing the 6 inch fat version just because it's a little bit bigger worm, and I was targeting, a 3 to 4 pound fish. And I feel like he'd be better off eating that bigger worm than, a 4 inch worm. So I just wanted a little bit something bigger down there to hopefully get a bigger bite.
Color wise, are you a freak on that, or are you sticking with a couple confidence colors?
I just a couple confidence colors, the pink and purples are so popular. They catch largemouth everywhere, and spotted bass. Of course, I got a box full. I got all the different colors, but I find myself picking up, Aaron's Magic or Martin's Madness, all those different colors real quick.
Why do so many fish eat a pink worm?
Have you
figured that out? Is that not weird to you? It's so weird to me.
If you ate a hamburger, like eating a shad every day, and you seen something pink come flying by and you were hungry, you might try it.
I'm just saying it's weird to me that color is so universal for spotted bass on blueback lakes to Sam Rayburn to everywhere. Everywhere.
I don't get it. I don't know what they see or what they think it is. I just think, it's just something different. That they don't eat very many pink worms other than these highly pressured lakes, I guess. Like Gunnersville, they probably all ate a pink worm before, but
Are you a big believer in the chartreuse tip, a hot tip on the tail of the worm generating more bites?
No, not really. I really don't use that on a drop shot very much. The only time I'll do that is, on a Senko style bait around bluegill or docks or bedfish, something like that. But as far as the drop shot, I really don't use that much. I keep it pretty standard.
Thoughts on translucent versus opaque and solid colors based on light penetration? I told you we're going to get deep here. I want to know all these things, Matt, because like I said, you've done over $500,000 and over 250,000 of that's been on a spinning rod with a drop shot. So
I have a theory on that. I think when it's bright and sunny, you should go with your darker, more opaque colors, because the fish have a harder time seeing when it's sunny rather than when it's cloudy.
Say that again. That's opposite, right?
Yes.
Of what 99% of people do.
Yes, it's opposite of what you would think. But here's my thing. My eyes are real sensitive to the sunlight. So if I walked outside and it's sunny without my sunglasses, I can't see much at all. Okay, but when it's cloudy, I can go out there without my sunglasses. Bass don't have sunglasses or even eyelids to close their eyes. So when it's real bright and sunny, you want something that's a little darker or a little opaque that they can see a little better. Whereas when it's cloudy, now this is for clear water, of course, or clearer water. That's when I like to go with your more translucent or a little bit, more natural see-through colors.
Okay, so sunny, you're going more of the bold gill, ox blood, that type of stuff.
I really
and then
like
when it's cloudy, you're going with the pinks and the light purples and the translucents.
A little bit different than most people would think, but I mean that's
Okay.
just my take on it, my theory.
That's interesting. Scent wise, and I go back and forth on this. Obviously, there's this craze where everyone's dumping this stuff, and I've got some buddies who are like, "Oh, bait's been marinating for 4 months," and you look at it and you're like, "What the heck is this stuff?" He's like, "It's a concoction that is made in Yugoslavia that I buy off the black market," and then other guys are like, "Dude, it's a piece of plastic. It's a sight bite. They're gonna eat the dang thing regardless." Where do you stand on scent wise?
So I definitely use scent. I use lip glue. I like a garlic or a crawfish flavor. I got gel or oil. I use them both. But my take on it is it's not going to get any more fish to bite your bait. But when they do bite it, they're going to hold on to it longer, and that's going to give you that extra second to either feel that you got a bite or to get a hook set in them. So they're going to hold on to it longer when it tastes good. And that's going to help you put a couple extra fish in the boat over the course of the year for sure.
All right. So we've exhausted, I think. Did I miss anything on the bait, the line, the setup, any of that? I just saw a video you posted. You just do the Palomar with the line back through.
Yeah, pretty simple.
Okay.
I think the Palomar knot is key because it helps the hook stand out a little bit differently than other knots. I've messed around with it and I started losing some fish using other knots. And I think there's something to the whole system of the Palomar knot.
Okay. Hook to land ratio is the next thing I want to go over with a spinning rod. As a whole, normal conditions, it's not like a weird bed fishing deal. You got a fish, there's a bite. What is your bite to land ratio, would you say? If you get 50 bites on a drop shot, how many of those fish are coming in the boat?
I would like to say all of them for sure. You're wanting to do everything in your power, but again, you never really know how they get hooked. They can get skin hooked and just kind of pull off. But really, that's the only reason you should be losing fish on a drop shot is if they just get skin hooked kind of sideways in the roof of their mouth, and then you end up ripping their skin out. But if you're losing multiple fish a day, you're doing something wrong. Something in your system is wrong. I would think so, yeah. The only real caveat to that is every once in a while you'll get that bait that folds over on itself and kind of basically it turns into a weed guard on the hook and doesn't allow you to get a hook set. So that will happen once in a while, and I haven't really found a way to prevent that. The only thing I really like to do for that is to make sure when you're rigging your worm is you just go in a tiny bit on the head before you turn it around to, like Tex pose it. So you want that worm to rip when a fish bites it every single time. Like it's worth it to go through more worms to land every fish. But if you rig that worm too far down on the head whenever you're Texas rigging it like that, if there's a good keeper on your hook, it's just going to keep too much plastic around that hook and turn it. It can ball up on the hook point like that. So I really just go in, just a tiny bit, 1/8 of an inch, 1/16 of an inch, just enough that the keeper will hold the worm there. But as soon as a fish bites, it's going to rip that head. And then you got just the hook there with basically a wacky rigged worm at that point.
Dude, that's a good tip. That's a really good tip.
Yeah. It's something to think about because whenever that worm is stuck on that keeper, there's so much plastic that has to go through and slide through the hook that it can help you lose fish. So the pack of worms is $4 or $5. It's worth it to land a couple more fish.
You're also a fan of the Hi-Viz Braid.
Yeah,
exclusively.
Especially on, wacky worm and Nico style baits, because you're throwing that out there and you want it to fall fast. So you're kind of letting it fall on a slack line and you're laying your line on top of the water, and it's very visible to watch for any kind of jumps or if it's running or anything like that.
Justin has a question. You got any tips for keeping the Ned from balling up on the hook set?
I don't, that's a little different because you're kind of rigging it up on the jig head, you're not really Texas rigging it. So that's just kind of the way they're eating it. That thing's down there standing straight up and they come down and eat it and that tail folds over on itself and not much you can do with that.
Uni to uni guy or FG guy or?
FG all the way.
Why do I need to learn that? I'm not breaking off my uni to uni. I can tie my uni to uni in 20 seconds. I have the utmost confidence in it. I can go up to 14-pound test. I'm not using the micro guide, so it's not affecting me. But everybody who's anybody in the spinning rod world uses this FG knot. I have not learned it. Sell me on why I need to learn it.
Well, I mean, if you're not having any issues, then you really don't have to change. I was tying the Alberto knot, and I was having issues. I wouldn't break off on fish or anything like that. But whenever I'd get hung up, I'd go and try and break off my hook, and my leader knot would break. And with the FG knot, that will never happen. You tie a good FG knot, you could literally use your leader until you're down to 6-8 inches. You could just keep cutting it off and breaking it off all the way down. So when you get a good FG knot, it lasts forever. Other than that, it's very thin. It goes through the guides well. You can use a little bit longer leader. So you could have that knot down into your reel if you really wanted to. I try not to, but
leader length, you keep it at that 8 to 10 foot.
Yeah, basically I like to have it, whenever my, making a cast or whatever, that knot's right above my reel.
Okay, in between the reel and the first guide.
Yeah, right in that 8 to 10, 12-foot range, somewhere in there.
I feel like a lot of guys that are trying to get into it, that's one of the most frustrating aspects is the connection knot in an awkward location, whether it's 2 turns onto the spool or right where it gets caught around the tip.
Yeah.
Like I think that's a key tip that you mentioned between when your bait's rigged and you're talking about pitching. Because a lot of this stuff is pitching target oriented, pitch into a brush pile, pitch into a fish, pitch into a dock post. You're flipping it, right? You're not overhand bomb casting it. Yeah, a little side arm. Yeah. But you've got enough line out to where that knot is you've got braid on the reel and then that first one, and it seems like if it's somewhere in the guides, I hate that deal where it like kind of catches on one and then wraps around the guide and then you always get a bite, because when you're doing that with when you're trying to do that square knot off the tip or off one of your guides, it's always like dunk and you're like, oh my God, now I got to stay calm while I try to get the square knot out of my guide.
Or you throw off your drop shot weight and then you got to go get a new drop shot weight, all that stuff. Yeah. But I mean, the FG knot's really not that difficult. It's all about just figuring out how to position your fingers. You got to use 4 or 5 of your fingers to make it all work and put a little tension on the rod. I actually just use my foot and hold my rod tip like away from me and hold the braid with your mouth, and then you got the tension. I guess I could give a little tip on that. One thing that I've kind of put my little spin on it lately is a lot of guys try and do it that way, and they do it too close to their face where they can't, like, you get a little cross-eyed. So if you do it out at a reasonable distance away from you, and then once you get the line all wrapped up, just take a pair of scissors and trim that braid tag end that you're holding with your teeth. And then it's a little more manageable to tie your overhand knots and pull everything tight and then trim them all up. And then I actually put a little dab of super glue on it and just kind of rub it with my fingers just to make sure that thing never unravels.
And most of the time you can fish the whole day. You'll never have to tie an FG on the water.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm doing most of those in the boat at the house or whatever. Rarely do you have to do one on the water.
Rod wise, action, power, length, good all around go-to. What are you reaching for?
I pretty much only use one spinning rod now. I've settled on the favorite Hex. It's a 7'2" medium heavy. So I got like 7 or 8 of those in the boat, and I use those for everything. They do have a 6'10" medium that I'll use if I get on a real good wacky worm bite where I need to skip a little bit better, but I really settled on that 7.2 medium heavy.
A lot longer, a lot stiffer than what a lot of guys typically think of when they think of picking up a drop shot. A lot of guys think of it as, you can move fish with a 7.2 medium heavy. I think that's a rod that you can catch 12 to 14 inches on, but if you have to move a 3-pounder away from an obstruction, you have a fighting chance with a medium heavy that's over 7 foot.
Yep, that's what I'm going for. I don't really want a super limber, moderate rod. I'm looking for a 7.2 medium heavy, fairly fast action that, like you said, you can move a fish, or you can really set the hook, drive the hook home out there a good ways if you have to.
Are you a 2,500 size, a 2,000, a 3,000, big spool, small spool? What are you looking for in a spinning reel?
I have a little bit of everything. I haven't really settled on a size or anything like that. The most important thing to me is the drag. You're just looking for a good drag in your reel. I've got some even 1,500 size spinning reels all the way up to 3,000. The only real difference in those are going to be a little bit different in weight and hold a little more line, but most of the time I'm not really making a super long cast, so I'm not really worried about how much line it's holding. Like I said, I'm just worried about that drag, because once you hook a fish, it's really just between you and that drag to land them.
That's where the money is in a spinning reel. Like between
sure.
a $50 spinning reel and a $700 spinning reel. The $50 spinning reel casts just as good as the $700 spinning reel. It's all in the guts as far as the drag is. Not all, but the vast majority of it is in the technology of the drag system.
Yep. That's the most important part as far as landing fish and making sure you keep tension without putting too much pressure on them based on your line size. Because most of the time, if you're fishing a drop shot, for instance, if everything's good equipment wise, your line's good, your hook's good, and you hook that fish, the only way you're losing that fish is if he wraps you up in some brush, or if you put too much pressure on him and break your line. I mean, I guess the only other way would be as if he swallowed that bait and his teeth are rubbing on your line. But other than that, it's just between you, that fish, and the drag, and you just keep steady tension and pressure on him, and just take your time and wear him out. And he's coming in the boat.
That's good stuff. So last open on Thousand Islands, this is funny about a spinning reel. My buddy Jared Miller let me borrow 2 Stellas. He's like, hey, you want to borrow some Stellas? And I was like, yeah. So I catch like a 4-pounder, and I'm like pumped. And, it's like 3 mile an hour currents, just stupid. Yeah. I'm like sour between Alexandria Bay and Waddington. So it's like humming, right?
Oh yeah.
So I'm like, yes, that's a good call. Put the rod, unhook it. Oh, look at this. Whoa, gorgeous fish. And I go back to cull, and I kind of hear something up front. And then my co-angler goes, whoa. And I'm like, what? And I look back around. I only had 2 rods out on the front deck, and there's only 1 rod on the front deck. Both of them had the Stellas on it. I'm like, oh, boy, we have an issue. So I'm like, where'd this rod go? Where'd it go? And he goes, I don't know, dude. Like, it's just gone. So I had the spot lock on. So I pull my trolling motor up, and I've got like braided line around the prop. And I pull, and I'm like, dude, I'd had it on spot lock, tossed the drop shot over the side after I caught the fish. The current swung the boat around, and I saw it on GoPro after. I have the video, and just shot the rod over the side of the boat. And I don't know how it didn't cut it, but it didn't cut it. And I got my buddy's $700 Stella back. But I was very careful. I was so careful after that. But I had to give that reel back, give those reels back. I remember the first day I was there, I caught like a 5, and I always thought that the smallmouth went zzz, 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 because they're swimming, like they're digging. Yeah. No, on the Stella, it's just like butter. It's just zzz, it's just super smooth out. And that was when I realized the importance of a good drag system on a spinning rod.
For sure. That's just as important as anything else in the whole setup, because it's all about that pressure. And whenever it's jerking like that, that gives them a split second of a little bit of less pressure, and that can cause that hook to pop out.
Wrapping up the spinning rod setup, I know this has been probably a little bit overboard as far as detail.
Oh no!
But I know you probably get a lot of questions about it. I know people ask me about it, but here's what I would say, and I want to get your take on this. A spinning rod and reel setup is a lot like a baseball glove or a hockey stick. You can't keep switching it. There is a feel to it. There is a comfort level to it. And once you find something that works, like, I don't think you're as effective if you pick up someone else's spinning rod and reel, because you get one that you understand the nuances, the action, everything too, and you're better with it the more you throw something that's consistent. Would you agree?
Absolutely. One of my mentors back in the day, I was probably 15, 16 years old, and he told me that. He was like, if you're going to buy some rods, get like 3 or 4 of the same rods and just figure out, how they feel. And then you're able to learn so much more about each bait and each technique, because you're not picking up a different rod that feels a little different. So you're able to use that same rod and just kind of get used to each feel. So I've kind of always had that mentality and always used, the multiple of the same setup rather than a bunch of different models.
All right, you go for one more quick segment. I promise we will not go through the exact deal with the Nico, but I want to get your take on the Nico and the Wacky Rig. It's been around for 20 years. Guys have been using it, but it seems like it's been more to the forefront. We're seeing a lot more hooks dedicated to it, a lot more applications, open water, deep water. I want to get your take on why fish are so susceptible to that Wacky, that Nico style, before we wrap things up. So if you're good,
sounds good.
All right, We'll be back. BTL on a Tuesday. All things spinning, rods, reels, line, baits with Matt Becker. I've learned a lot. Hopefully everyone else has learned a lot. We'll be back right after this.
Vibrating jigs are a great choice for any time of year, and the Kamikaze Swim-On is a perfect match for any vibrating jig. 2 sizes and the unique tail design gives it a bait fish profile and a great swimming action for realism. There are 17 colors. See them all at bigbitebaits.com.
The Spro Little John crankbait has been around for almost 15 years, and it is one of my go-to crankbaits whenever I need a fish in the boat, so you can never have enough new colors. That's why Spro's coming out with a handful of new colors, including Pearl Shad, which has this bleached out white look, but it's got this pearlescent, really, really pretty. We've got Copper Shad, which looks amazing in the water. It's got that purple flake on the back, really, really pops in the water. And then if you want some real pop, we've got Sparkle Shad, nothing but sparkles all over this thing. And then last but not least, we've got the matte Sexy Shad, just a really different looking color for a crankbait. So you want to give them a little different look. That matte Sexy Shad is definitely the one to go with. All these colors are available in the original Little John and the MD.
Combining one of the most popular hook styles with Gamakatsu's beefier Superline offering, the Gamakatsu Superline Offset Round Bend delivers the strength necessary to target big fish in heavy cover. Well suited for braided line and heavier fluorocarbon, the Gamakatsu Superline Offset Round Bend is built using stronger Superline wire that allows anglers to easily fish a finesse worm around heavy cover. The round bend offers a larger bite area, perfect for any worm presentation, while increasing your hookup ratios. The newly enhanced Z-bend holds your plastics on the hook longer, reducing the number of pull-offs and reducing damage to plastics. Available in 2/0, 3/0, 4/0, and 5/0, this is the most durable worm hook, designed for heavier lines that hold your bait on longer.
Preparation is key to success. And that preparation starts well before you ever hit the water. You're only as strong as your connection to the fish, and your line is that critical connection. Confidence in your line every minute of every day on the water is a necessity, and failure, it's not an option. Sunline makes the fluorocarbon, nylon, and braided lines to give you the strength to guarantee your confidence.
All right, welcome back. Wrapping up things here on BTL on a Tuesday. All things spinning rods with Matt Becker, who clearly knows his stuff. That's crazy when you think about it. You're like, $250,000 that you have won. You're not even 30 yet. You won $250,000 on a spinning rod, dude.
It's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. I seen I just passed $500,000 in earnings this year, and I couldn't believe that at all.
Yeah, it's nuts.
It really is.
You think the more fish you catch when there's thousands and thousands of dollars on the line with the spinning rod, the more comfortable you get with it? Not just going crank, 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 boat flip, crank, 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 net, and actually just knowing for 2 or 3 minutes you've got a $10,000 fish on the line and you're just chill with it.
Yep. I mean, that's with anything. The more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it. So you just get out there and do it, especially in those high pressure situations. It just you're more comfortable with it, and in turn, you don't screw up and do something wrong.
You got an epic spinning rod battle that sticks out on your head that you were like a 5-minute just epic battle with a beast that made you a lot of money?
Not a big giant fish. I had one at Lake Martin in that tournament where it took me under a dock and we were seesawing back and forth. I actually had to stick my rod around 2 different dock posts to get to where it actually had ran through like a splinter in the dock post and was stuck there. Yeah, luckily it was on the braid section, but actually, I think that video was on Major League Fishing, or it's on my YouTube channel, but it was, a 3-4 minute battle before I was able to get that fish. It wasn't much. It was like a 2.5 pounder, but it called me, a pound that day and helped me make the top 10. So that's really the one that sticks out the most. I've had a bunch of, battles, especially with smallmouth. Those things fight forever. Had a couple of 3-4 minute battles with those. Caught a 6-pounder at Rayburn this year on a spinning rod that took me, probably 2 minutes to land him.
Out of a brush pile, or?
Yeah, out of a brush pile.
What do you do when you hook one in a brush pile on a spinning rod? You just tension, try to get them out, swim them out? Like, what's your strategy on that? Because, that's if it's 12-pound test, that's pretty light line with a big fish, and those things are pretty gnarly.
Yeah, so my strategy with that is I keep my drag pretty tight for the hook set. So I keep my drag pretty tight when I'm fishing, and as soon as I set the hook and get some pressure on that fish, I'll try and pull him away from whatever he's in a little bit, and then once he starts making that first surge, I'll back the drag off, and then it's just me versus him.
Do you find on a spinning rod the more you give them the business, the harder they fight?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I feel like you can lead them around like a dog on a leash all practice if you've got a screw lock or something, but then at a tournament you're like whack, you reel into them really hard and then they're just explode.
Yeah, they go nuts for sure.
Yeah. Probably the best spinning rod battle that I have ever watched was Jimmy Washam in that title event. Remember that? He got that sucker stuck on a log.
Yeah.
And it was 3-4 minutes. He went back and forth and finally got it.
Yep. I actually marshaled with Justin Lucas. I don't know what year it was when he won on the Potomac River.
Really?
And he had one of those day one. Yeah, I was with him day one of the tournament, and he had a battle like that in that famous dock now where it was 3-4 minutes of seesawing and battling, and he finally got it out, and it was a 3.5-4 pounder.
He's good with it. Who do you think the best is out there? Just take all professional fishing. If you had to do the top 3 that are going right now, that you're that guy's the GOAT with a spinning rod.
With a drop shot, it's Justin for sure. He catches them everywhere we go on it, no matter what. He's gonna weigh in bass on a drop shot for sure.
He doesn't talk about it a ton.
Well, yeah, he doesn't want anyone else doing it.
Should we not have talked about this much?
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. No one's gonna know.
No, you think Justin? You think Justin's a underrated, sneaky good drop shotter?
Oh yeah.
He's not under. Everyone knows he does it, but you think he does it way more than people know?
Way more.
You'd put him ahead of Cody Meyer and Brett Naylor?
I don't know. I haven't fished against them enough or hung out with them enough to talk to them about it. But definitely those guys are up there for sure.
Anyone else?
Shin Fukai's a sneaky little finesse guy.
Yeah,
too.
Shin's good too. Wasn't he doing when he was out on a bait cast where he was Nico rigging offshore at Chickamauga or whatever he was calling it?
He's using that little cover scat thing.
Yeah. Have you used that? I have not. It looks so
I
cool.
have.
Does it work?
It's interesting. I haven't caught a bass on it yet, but it's essentially whenever you twitch it, it looks like a topwater walking the dog underwater. It just kind of twitches like that. Yeah, it's very interesting, and I just haven't spent enough time with it to figure out the situation for it.
Gray Buck throws a spinning rod a lot too. He's another good one, isn't he, on tour?
Yeah, he does. He's pretty good. We kind of grew up in both in Pennsylvania, different sides of the state, but same sort of background, and definitely prefer to use that as well.
All right, what do you think a fish thinks a wacky worm or a Nico rig is? Why do they eat that thing?
I don't know. They think it's a French fry falling from the sky. I don't know what they think it is. It could definitely be a bluegill or something like that, especially around docks when there's a lot of bluegill around.
My theory on that, Matt, is it doesn't matter how many people are throwing it, those fish can never get conditioned to it because it's a different fall and different signature every single time.
Yep. Fall's a little different, and there's no noise to it or anything, so they'll never get conditioned or see enough of them. You could always just change colors if they do,
Yeah. Main color, just natural stuff on that. Green pumpkins.
Yep. Green pumpkins with some flakes, blue, red, purple, copper, all that kind of stuff. And then, watermelons, watermelon gold, watermelon red.
Dudley, we can't forget him. Dudley's I was talking with someone on the show. Dudley's the most aggressive spinning rod user that has ever existed. I've never seen someone so aggressive with such a finesse presentation.
That's right. He's fishing that wacky worm a lot differently than I do or most people do. His is almost a topwater.
Yeah, he force feeds it to him.
Yeah.
He's crouching down. We call him the bull in the china shop with the wacky worm.
Oh, yeah.
All right, dude. What did we not cover in this? Anything else we want to cover? Anything else we want to go over? I had some of my questions answered. Some of the things that I had were confirmed. Changed my opinion on some things. I greatly appreciate it. Hopefully, give some people a little bit more confidence because it's all about putting fish in the boat, right? So the vast majority of people aren't fishing for $100,000 and Pro Circuit Angler of the Years and qualifying for BPTs. They just want to go out and they want to catch some fish. They want to weigh in a limit. They want to cash a check. They want to take their kids, their wife, their girlfriends out and catch some fish. And this is a great way to do that, to go out on a lake that you don't have a ton of experience on and at least put yourself around some fish and have a great time and catch a limit. Put yourself in position to be one bite away from winning the club tournament. I think that's what the spinning rod, the drop shot, the Ned, the Nico, the wacky worm, that's what it's all about for me.
Absolutely. Same here. It's all about putting fish in the boat because, that's how I make my living. That's how I make my money. So if I'm not catching fish, I'm not going to make any money. So I got to do whatever I can and to put myself in the highest percentage baits to catch fish. And in turn, hopefully they weigh enough to get paid. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the rest of the season. We got 2 more. The next one at James River is kind of a sneaky spinning rod event. I'm hoping not many people are doing it, but I know you can catch them pretty good on it there.
Really?
Yeah, you should know.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, dude. You're in a really good position. How are they doing the BPT qualifying this year? Is it 1 year? Did they go back to 2 years, or what's the?
No, it's every year now. Top 10 is
okay.
Yeah.
So you're right there, dude. Is this? A couple more good derbies and you're in.
Yeah, it's been. We've had 4 good ones, so we got 2 more to go. Usually I'm due for a bomb every year, but we're gonna try to prevent that this year and do everything we can these next 2 and make sure we just have 2 more consistent finishes and qualify for that BPT.
I think you do really well there. That's got to be right. That's right up your alley, is it not?
Yeah, I've fished 2 of them last year with those guys. And,
yeah, you finished 18th in one, and what'd you finish in the other one?
Like 20 something. Yeah,
solid.
So it definitely fits my style and fits how I like to fish. So yeah, I'm definitely excited about it. That was the goal. The last 2 years, and last year I had a little snafu at the end of the year and kind of knocked me out of it. And it really lit the fire for this year. So I've been fishing with a little chip on my shoulder all year.
Heck yeah. Well, I've been wanting to have the old spinning rod conversation with you for a while. We kind of met up at the Classic. You actually walked past me. I had no idea how tall you were. You're like a big dude. You're what, 6'3", 6'4"?
Yeah, probably 6'2", 6'3". I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't been to the doctor in a while, so.
But I was like, dude, Matt Becker, I need to make sure to get him on BTL to talk about the spinning rod stuff. So I greatly appreciate you taking time out of your day to go over it, and you're welcome on BTL anytime, man.
Oh, I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to tomorrow's show. I'm curious about that.
Are you a mental dude? Like, do you see value in it? I feel like people scoff at it at fishing, but like I started doing some research, and pretty much every high-level athlete from Tom Brady to Kobe Bryant back in the day had mental gurus, mental coaches.
I don't have any coaches or anything like that, but I definitely pay attention to it and make sure that I get my head right before each tournament. You know, I'll take some time and just, relax and make sure I'm not stressed out and not, too tired. All those things affect how you fish on the water, whether you know it or not. So I definitely pay attention to it just personally and try and make sure everything's in line before I launch the boat for practice or for a tournament or anything.
Yeah, Matt's Stefan on tomorrow with his former meditation coach, Katie Gruber, who's going to talk. She's like the yoga meditation thing more so than the psychologist, which I'm even more like interested in, kind of natural thing. I was trying to figure out yesterday, I had Bobby Murray and Steve Bowman. I couldn't find anyone else named Matt, so I could just have a host and then just have an entire week of Matts. But
clean sweep of the week.
Yeah, no, I'm very interested to see how that one. To see how that one will go too, and then if it goes well, like if she has a program or system or something, I'm gonna do it, man.
Heck yeah, try it
like
out.
If there's like how does that work? Is there like a 6-week program? Do you like Skype, like FaceTime with them, or can you do it by yourself? Do you have to go in somewhere? Because I need it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to learn about it as well and maybe pick something up from it. Because like I said, the mental side of it's probably, 75-80% of the whole game. So you got to keep.
You freak out ever? You seem pretty chill. You ever have
No,
meltdowns?
I really try not to. I'll get pissed off or angry for a couple seconds, 30 seconds, a minute if I lose a big fish or whatever. But that's about it. Last year was one of the most trying years for me. I won a tournament, but I had pretty much every other tournament last year. I lost a big fish that would have given me 20, 30 points at each tournament. And really any one of those, I probably would have made the BPT last year, but it was a frustrating year, and it really lit the fire for this year.
Well, you're making the most out of it this year. So.
Yep. That's the plan. So I appreciate you having me on.
All right. Thanks, Matt.
We'll see you guys
later. All right. That was, Matt Becker, who is in a very good position, like you said, to make the BPT heading into next year, and then his game, I think, really suits it. So Matt kind of talked about it, excited for tomorrow. Matt Stefan, I don't even know if we're going to get into the Sasquatch Yeti talk. We both have a story of that last time he was on. He was like, dude, we didn't even talk about it. And I was like, I didn't think he wanted to talk about it. He's like, no, we can talk about it, because I had one when I was up there. And then we got Katie on. It's been a fun week. Really enjoyed yesterday's show, hearing about the history of the sport with Bobby Murray, two-time Classic champ, and then Bass Fishing Hall of Famer Steve Bowman. Matt Becker today really dove into some of the educational aspects of it with the spinning rod. And I don't know why, it just seems to me more like the spinning rod is way more detail-oriented, and the more comfortable, the more detail-oriented you can get with it, the results pay off. And then tomorrow, we're going to dive into the mental side of competitive bass fishing. So this has been BTL on a Tuesday. Talk to everyone tomorrow.